This is a transmission cooler bracket shroud housing, finally in position. Not welded in place yet, but it's in there. I think it's going to work. Took longer than it should have, but it's going to work. May look like a bit of overkill, but it's a transmission cooler support bracket that goes in the back of the car because, well, putting it at the front of the car didn't really seem like an option because I have enough lines running to the front already. And at some point in time, I'd like to put an AC line through there too. So I just thought mounting the transmission cooler at the rear of the car would be the thing to do. So I made a mildly complicated transmission cooler bracket and put it in the rear of the car. If you're interested in how that went, stick around. How to install a transmission cooler in a V8 Celica. And you find this happening quite frequently. You're working on one thing and you realize it's going to be in the way if you want to put in all the brackets and accessories for something else. So before I do this inner fender well right here, I'm going to have to do all the mounting points for the transmission cooler back in here. Because with this in here, I won't be able to access anything to weld it. With this out of here, I'll be able to get in here and weld all that stuff in place. So transmission cooler is next. And this is the transmission cooler. And once again, some highly detailed plans on how it's going to be put in. After putting this cooler in here 5 or 6 different ways, I was going to put it with the lines on the front of it, but then I decided that putting it in here with the lines on top would probably be better because it'd give me easier access to be able to work on it through the top, because this is all going to be closed off pretty much. So it's going to go in there something like that. And to have the cooler setting in there in the position I want, I'm going to bend a piece of sheet metal, something like this right here, just wide enough for the cooler to set on the bottom of it. I'm going to use rubber mounts to cushion it top and bottom. I'm going to cut a hole in it. That'll let the air come through. Mount a fan to the back side like that. And the best part of this is the 2 pieces that I'm mounting to, the frame tube on the bottom, square tube runs at about this angle in the car. I have to keep all of this square. Frame tube that I'm going to mount to at the top runs a little bit outward like that. So I'm going to have to make a filler panel across here to keep this perfectly square and make sure I can mount it solid all the way across this top tube. I'm sure I'll figure something out. Maybe. And I've cut this a little bit bigger than what it really needs to be. And, well, that makes it real hard to get up in here too. But once I get this cardboard in place, I had it in here once. Then I can start marking where it's got to be trimmed off. It's going to have to be a little bit trimmed off right in here, so that this, I'm going to trim it right in here so that this face of the panel will end up against the rail. I'm going to have to trim it up here at the front to get around all these little points right here. And I don't think that I'm going to do anything to weld it to this. I think I'm just going to put a flange on it so that it's stiff enough to not flex back and forth, and just have it very close to this panel in the front. That'll save me having to make a precise angle, weld it, and all that stuff. And I think that will work out perfectly because the gap will be probably around 1/4 of an inch or so. That'll let a little extra cooling air around there to get over to the exhaust. That's what I'm going to tell myself anyway. A little marking, a little cutting. CAD work takes time, but we're getting the general idea of it here. I think it's close. At least it looks like the transmission cooler will have support in all 4 corners. Cardboard aided design. Cardboard parts, we just need a little glue. I've figured out where I want to put my transmission cooler at. I've got most of its mounting points figured out. I know that my inner fender is going to be right in here like this. What I need to do is make this and this come together and attach. But before I make any of this, I need to figure out exactly how it's going to attach. And I believe this is just going to run from the top of the strut tower here all the way around like this, continue across here, up to here, and then this section right in here will be removable so that I can open this up and have access through here. I think all that's going to work. What do you think? Now all we do is take our little pieces of cardboard that we've cut out into all kinds of fun and interesting shapes, transfer them onto sheet metal, weld them together, and maybe we'll end up with something that works. Too worried about where the camera was sitting to think about where I was going to position the end of this piece of metal. We'll get it. And I didn't even get the camera positioned right. And we have manufactured our final piece part of the transmission cooler bracket. Getting ready to weld a few things together here. I've got these little rubber bushings, anti-vibration. They're from Improved Racing. Ordered them off Amazon. And I'm going to put them in this steel so the steel's kind of thin, and I do not want the steel to cut through it. So I got these washers that are just the right size to fit over them. And I'm going to tack weld the washers to the metal plate directly in the middle, centered up perfectly with this little guy that I made right here. It will just sit in that part of the hole, centers that up, and then it'll hold this centered, and I can tack it together. See how that works out? Well, better yet, I can show you how that's working out so far. That's how it centers them up. And I don't know how, but I got that one off center a little bit. Oh well. Line up that. Make sure I've got a washer that's been primed with weld through primer, or as I like to call it, weld resistant primer. And get everything lined back up again. That looks like it's in the right spot. A couple of little welds on that, enough so it doesn't crack back out, enough to hold it. See what happens. Now that I have everything clamped together with a couple of vice grips, I can start spot welding some parts, and whatever I can get to spot weld is what I'm going to spot weld first, and then hopefully I'll be able to take some of the vice grips off and get to the point where I can spot weld that without anything shifting, so that I don't end up starting this whole thing over again. Let's see how this goes. I'm in position for the first one. It looks like a weld. I just want to see if it'll wiggle or if it is actually welded. Oh, it's welded. Oh yeah. All right, it's working. Might have held the button a little longer than I needed to on that one, but hey, more is always better, right? All right, I'll rejoin you in what will look like a matter of moments, but it'll probably be hours. And another spot weld. Try to get these spaced somewhat evenly. Probably should have marked them out so I'd have marks to line up with. Well, it seems to be working. Well, that ain't looking too bad for an amateur. Now we're going to need a bracket to mount the fan on, and we're going to do the same thing all over again. We're just going to make it out of cardboard, magically make it out of metal, and slap it all together. And of course it fits perfectly the first try. No, seriously, I mean it. It fit perfectly the first try. So now all that's left to do is clean everything up and paint it. And while we're on the subject of painting, well, let's talk about the sandblaster. I've got 2 or 3 videos already on improvements I've done to this sandblaster, but I did a couple more over the last couple weeks, and I found out 3 things that a sandblaster needs. It needs airflow, and more airflow. High volume fittings are your friend, but look for that video coming soon. And the engine is out. Now I can get in there and get some welding done. So now that I have a place to mount the transmission cooler and the engine's out of the way, so I've got plenty of room to work in here, I can finally start working on the inner fenders, and I'll lock the outer quarter panels in place permanently. Well, thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and maybe I'll get this thing running again one day. It starts. It runs. Alright, like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, and as always, thanks for watching.